Contracts in the NBA are a funny thing because you'll have massive discrepancies in pay where some guys are making near 40 times the amount of their teammates, and sometimes paying out big money to certain players doesn't always pan out the way that management thought it would. But then on the other side of the spectrum, you have contracts where guys far exceed expectations and outplay their deals, so much so that it's even led to deals being renegotiated mid-contract. And while I recently made a video on the contracts that were given out this past summer that teams are already regretting, which I'll leave a link to in the description in case you missed it, in this video we're going to be doing the opposite and discussing the biggest bargain signings from the 2023 offseason now that we're nearly at the end of the first season under their respective contracts. But first, a big shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Underdog Fantasy. I know you guys are probably getting sick of me saying this, but I absolutely love this app. Even if they weren't a sponsor, I would be using this thing regularly. For those that aren't familiar with the platform, let me tell you about it real quick. My personal favorite that I use on the app is NBA Pick'ems. They have higher or lowers on most player stats for any game. Just pick higher or lower on a given player's stat for their upcoming game, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night if you do 5 pick'ems and you get them all right. And guys, they're offering viewers on this channel an exclusive offer. If you use the promo code AND1HOOPS, all one word, you'll get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Who doesn't want free money, right? It's really that easy. It's also a great way to support the channel. I will leave a link to the site and the code in the description and pinned comment if you're interested. Now, I do have a few call outs on this again, as I did in my most regrettable contracts video, because a lot of people still seem to miss this point. I am only going to be talking about the biggest bargain offseason signings for players that were signed or extended this past offseason in 2023. Like a lot of people in my last video were asking why Jordan Poole wasn't included in the worst offseason signings. Well, that's because he signed his current deal in 2022 when he was still with the Warriors. So we're just doing 2023. And then the other things I considered here were how a player showed up relative to their contract value, their age, and their performance this season, while also factoring in how much more favorable that contract is going to become over time as the salary cap continues to increase year over year. I'm going to start with one that I initially thought was going to be a bit of an overpay, but then turned out to be an excellent signing for a perfect rotational player for the Orlando Magic, and that's Mo Vagner, who signed a 2-year, $16 million extension. What's funny is that the Magic essentially got Vagner for free when he was part of a 3-team trade that sent him to the Boston Celtics from the Washington Wizards, and the Celtics went on to waive him shortly after acquiring the guy. This was at the 2021 trade deadline, and then the Magic would then go up to pick him up and sign him for the rest of the season for a minimum deal. And now he's become an integral piece for them as a big off of the bench. Like, fit is so important in the NBA. I feel like that cannot be understated. And Vagner fits perfectly with the Magic as their backup 5 to give them energy, finishing in the paint, offensive rebounding for second chance points, and he can even hit it from outside. Like, he's not a 3-point shooter by any means, but he's become more respectable from distance, shooting it at 34% clip. That defenses do have to stay on him along the perimeter, which gives the Magic a bit of floor spacing in that second unit. He's putting up a career high in scoring on the best efficiency of his career, and in his limited minutes, he's putting in the best box plus minus of his career along with his highest number of win shares. He's contributing to winning in a meaningful way for a Magic team that is set to make their first playoff appearance in over 4 years. Next on this list, and I actually like this signing from the get-go, but that's the New Orleans Pelicans signing Herb Jones to a 4-year, $53 million deal. The annual figure to some might seem like a lot, at an average salary of over $13.5 million, but with the full mid-level exception being a little over $12 million, and the fact that the Pelicans have Jones locked in for the next 3 seasons after this one, as that mid-level exception figure continues to go up, is a bargain deal, especially when you consider he's only 25. He'll be playing through that contract in his prime. And the thing about Jones is you look at his numbers and you think, well, there's nothing eye-popping here. He averages 11 points per game on solid efficiency, 3.5 rebounds, and 2.6 assists. Well, it's Jones's defense that sets him apart, and also the fact that he's upped his three-point shooting significantly, making him a legitimate 3-and-D threat, which is such a highly coveted player in today's NBA. He's still shooting it at a fairly low volume at just 3.6 attempts per game from 3, but at 42%, up from 33% last year and on lower volume last season, all the while still maintaining his elite level point of attack defense and his tenacity on the defensive side of the ball that brings so much energy for the Pelicans as a whole. He is without a doubt going to be an all-defensive team player in the near future, if not this season, and for the price the Pelicans got him for and fitting a position of need is a bargain deal. Next on this list, and I'm actually going to combine these players because they play on the same team, and I know some are going to say I'm biased as a Bulls fan, but even putting my biases aside as much as I possibly can, I don't know how you can't consider contracts of Coby White and Adesumo absolute steals relative to their production. I'll start with Coby White, who the Bulls signed to a 3-year, $33 million extension as a restricted free agent, even before Coby broke out this season. And him playing like an most improved player of the year candidate, even based on his production and improvement from the year before, he was worth that deal. When you consider the Bulls got a 23-year-old player for below the mid-level exception on a long-term deal for which they'll be paying him through the age of 26 as he enters his prime. But then you also compound that with the fact that Coby is having a breakout season, going from averaging less than 10 points per game to now 19, shooting the ball the best we've ever seen, improved nearly every facet of his game from his handles, decision-making, shot selection, passing, rebounding, for a starting level point guard who can give you 20 points per game and you're paying him half of what most guys at his production get in the league is insane. And then Adesumo, who the Bulls signed to a 3-year, $21 million deal, who a lot of Bulls fans, even myself to an extent, thought that was a bit of an overpay after Ayo was coming off a down year and a sophomore slump. Ayo, after that injury to Zach LaVine and being thrusted into the starting lineup and taking on a much bigger role when it was initially thought he might not even be able to make it into the rotation, has been huge for the Chicago Bulls, both in raising his shooting and overall offensive game, upping his efficiency, shooting 50% overall and near 40% from three, all while still playing high-level defense. The Bulls, for all of their flaws and mistakes they've made as an organization in recent years, they were able to get Coby and Ayo, 23-year-olds at the time of the signing, and likely their future starting backcourt. They got those guys at a combined $18 million per year for the next 3 years, under $20 million for two starting level players in the NBA who haven't even entered their primes yet. Next on this list, and I feel like some are going to disagree with this one, but I still think this was an incredible deal, especially when going into the offseason when most analysts predicted the guy was going to get a lot more than what he ultimately signed for, and that's the LA Lakers signing Austin Reaves to a 4-year, $53.8 million deal. And look, I know some people will say, Reaves is a bit overrated. He's overrated relative to how the media portrays him to be and especially how much Laker fans hype him up. But really, when you think about his production on the court and the fact that the Lakers signed him to an average annual salary of a little over $13 million, this season just making $12 million, which is mid-level exception type money, getting him for that rate when he's become an important piece of the Lakers offense, putting up 16 points per game, their fourth leading scorer, a great facilitator on offense with his passing, can play on and off the ball, whether in the catch and shoot or creating his own shot. Yeah, he's not a good defender, but at least he gives strong effort on that end of the floor, which is not something that can be said for a lot of guys in today's NBA, where teams are void of defense on most nights. And so to get Reaves at that price when there was talk of him actually commanding $90 million in a deal around the league and getting him for less than what the Lakers paid for Hachimura is a steal in my opinion. And then the final player I've got on this list that was a bigger bargain contract signing on the year was the New York Knicks snagging Donte DiVincenzo to a 4-year, $46.8 million deal. Now, I'll be honest, I thought this was a big overpay by the Knicks when he was signed this offseason. Like, I liked DiVincenzo and I actually wanted him to be on the Bulls for his shooting, but I viewed him more in the $5 to $7 million a year range type player. Because yeah, he can shoot decently well, but what else does he do? Well, it turns out DiVincenzo has been such a critical piece for the Knicks and their offense and a big factor for their success this season. I mean, really, if you had told me that Donte DiVincenzo was going to be third in the league in threes made this season, only behind Steph Curry and Luka Doncic, I would have said you're insane. For a guy that couldn't even put up double digits in scoring last season, and you're telling me he's going to score at that rate on such high efficiency, shooting at 40% from deep at near 9 attempts per game, literally one of the best three-point shooters in the league, yeah, you're nuts. But DiVincenzo has been doing just that, and surprisingly enough, he's actually playing solid defense in Tom Thibodeau's system, which you at least have to put in effort on that end of the floor to get playing time for Tibbs. Like, DiVincenzo is 7th in the league in steal percentage and 8th in total steals, so he's hustling, bringing energy to the defensive side of the ball while at the same time being one of the top shooters in the NBA. I really don't think anyone would have expected that of DiVincenzo going into this season, and you get him at an average annual salary for a player in the peak of his prime for less than the mid-level exception for the next 4 years. That contract is going to look more and more favorable as the years go on. So there you have it, contracts from this past offseason that were the biggest bargain deals of the offseason based on the first year of said contracts. Let me know in the comments where you guys agree or disagree or anybody that I missed. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.